Let's begin then. Okay, a very good evening to you all who have joined us for today's talk. We welcome you to the fourth episode of the webinar series Let's Talk Linguistics, organized by the Department of Linguistics, University of Calcutta. Let's Talk Linguistics has been conceptualized primarily for the students and freshers in this discipline to make them aware of the various scopes and prospects that this subject has to offer, and to shed some prejudices associated with the subject in the process. We have hosted episodes earlier in this series. The first episode was about the linguistic prospects in the public sector. The second one talked about the area of linguistic fieldwork and scopes related to language documentation. The third in the series provided us with details about how to pursue linguistic research in non-English speaking country. The links of all these episodes are available in our official YouTube channel, CU Linguistics. Today, we are honored to host the fourth episode in this series, which will talk about linguistics in the private sector. Before moving on, we would like to address our audience who's watching us on our YouTube channel. You are requested to write down your questions in the comment section. We will then convey those to our speakers to answer. So now, moving on to our discussion. Today's topic is linguistics in the private sector. We are honored to have our esteemed speakers with us today, Dr. Debasri Chakrabarti and Martyna Kosciukiewicz, both of whom are currently working in the private sector in India and abroad respectively. I sincerely welcome you to this interactive session. Our first speaker, Dr. Debasri Chakrabarti, who is a former student of our department, is a computational linguist with 13 years of industry experience and 6 years of academic research experience in the field of natural language processing. She is currently working with Google via CTS, and her ongoing research is on machine learning based natural language understanding and generation, which is to develop a chat box for different Indo-Aryan languages. She has completed her PhD from IIT Bombay, and her initial research involved building WordNet for Hindi, which was later extended to Hindi WordNet and ontology. She also has applied knowledge in the different kinds of machine translation systems. Our second speaker, Martyna Kosciukiewicz, is a conversational architect at Quantiphi. Her work involves improving conversational AI solutions. Her areas of focus are taxonomy curation, data annotation, and building virtual agents in DFCX. In the past, she has worked as a translator and English language teacher. She holds a master's degree in English studies from the University of Warsaw and a bachelor's degree in English philology with cultural studies from the University of Lodz. Her courses include applied linguistics, phonetics, phonology, to name a few. So with this, I welcome you once again to the webinar. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining us. Okay, to begin with the question answer session, firstly, we would like to know how has been your journey from being a student of linguistics and English studies, present positions that you both are holding, like what kind of projects you have been part of before joining your present positions, what your journey has been like. Debasri, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Rajeshwari, first of all, for giving us such a nice introduction. And
could you please be a bit louder?
Yeah, sure. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Yeah. So a big thank you to you. Journey in linguistics. Yes. So it's like I joined Sanskrit College for my bachelor's. And before joining, during my 11th, 12th days, basically I was interested in literature. Okay. So, and there was a thing like, okay, I'll pursue my career in literature. Then I happened to meet my brother's guide. My elder brother at that time, he was doing his PhD in anthropology. So I happened to meet him in one occasion, and he asked me, like, what do you want to do? So I said that, yeah, I'm going to pursue literature. So he was the one who first time said me that why literature and not linguistics. So I said, I don't know about linguistics. And he then kindly provided me with some of the preliminary books. And I started with Dr. Porish Mojumdar's initial books. And I felt oh, I think I should do this, because this is something that really, really interests me. And during the break from higher secondary till, the admission process and everything, I actually went through different books and these things, and then I thought that yes, I will join it. And then I started my career with took admission in Sanskrit College, completed my graduation, and I was lucky enough to have very good teachers like Meena Di. She taught us morphology and phonetic phonology. So that was something actually interested me a lot. Coming to masters, I had Krishnadi, Meenadi, of course, and Ovijita. They were also inspiring, and actually, they were something like, they had made me motivated to be in the field and not change the field anymore, because the interest grew. The interest grew with those things. Their teaching, their discussions, the references they used to give, and all these things, that helped a lot. And after that, after completing my master's, yes, there was a time, because it is only at that point of time there were no, there was no computational linguistics, or even there were very little projects in the university also, um, as opposed to now. So I was thinking like what to do, and of course I would do PhD. So then again, Vijita was the one who said me that before doing PhD, do some initial research, go with some readings, try. So I was preparing for my NET and for my NET exam, and during that time, there was an announcement. So at that point of time, from Government of India, they actually launched various projects in and where they needed linguists. Okay, so at that point of time, also computational linguist or computational linguistics was not considered as a domain or something, or at least it was not known to us. It didn't reach till us. So there was a requirement where they were hiring linguists, and in our department there was a circular, and I was lucky enough because the puja vacation was going on at that time, and I was visiting Central Library. So I went there and I met Vijita, and he said to me that why don't you try? Why don't you apply for this, and why don't you try? Course, I tried, I applied, but there was, I was scared enough, because it's like I always went through theoretical linguistics, historical linguistics. I don't know anything about computers. Even I didn't know anything. At that point of time, computer was not very, we were not familiar with those things. So I went to IIT Bombay. I had given my interview. And in my interview, Professor Bhattacharya, Pushpak Bhattacharya, he made things so easy. Like whatever he was asking, it was all related to our field. Whatever I have done in my masters, it was pure linguistic questions, So syntactic ambiguity, lexical ambiguity, and things of that. So when I got that position, and I joined IIT Bombay for the project of Hindi WordNet. Okay, so WordNet in India started with Hindi WordNet, and yes, it was they were motivated by Princeton University's English WordNet. So, and I started working there. So it was basically a lexical database creation using all linguistic methods. So if you have to do that, you'll have to be a linguist first, in the sense You have to know the syntax, you have to know semantics, and then only you can do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Martyna, would you like to add to it?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this
Thank
talk.
you. Thank you.
And having the chance to talk with you all. So yeah, as the previous speaker, my journey wasn't linear and simple and straight as well. And I also, when I was studying, you know, and before I went to the university, I also didn't know about like computational linguistics. I wasn't into computers at all, you know. And I just loved language, you know. I loved reading first, you know, that my love of language kind of guided me towards studying linguistics. And I thought that I would be a translator, you know, and I was for some time. I did a bit of translation after I graduated. So I studied English philology of cultural studies, and then English studies. I studied linguistics and culture and literature and a bunch of other things, you know, as part of that. And I did a translation specialization, and I did a teaching specialization as well, to be able to teach English as a foreign language. Although I didn't want to be a teacher, which is funny because then I ended up being a teacher as well. You know, what's important for us, I think, and for you as students, is to realize that those career paths are windy, you know, and you will think that you want to do one thing, and then you'll, you know, discover there's something else, and it's okay. It's okay, you know, to you don't have to have it all figured out. But it's good to have some inspiration, and it's good to have some, you know, guidance. So, you know, I hope that we're going to all learn together a bit about that today. So after I graduated, I worked as a translator. I worked as an English teacher abroad, which is funny, in Ireland. So I was teaching English to international students, people from other countries who came to Ireland to learn English and to live here. And I worked with those international students as a teacher, as a translator also, because I was kind of mediating between those students and you know, also employers here, because those students did also internships here, like work placements here in Ireland. So I did that, you know, and but you know, I enjoyed it, but I knew that it wasn't something that I want to do. I started discovering it, but it's not something that I want to do for, you know, my whole life. That there was something else that I want to explore. And at that time, I was looking for an additional source of income, because teaching is not very well paid, you know. And I started doing data annotation as a side job, you know, kind of freelance. And this is where I learned about NLP, and, you know, that there's something else that I could do with my degree in linguistics and language in general. So, you know, I did that data annotation, you know, freelancing, and I wanted to dig deeper. And then I worked as, you know, got a job as a data annotator at LinkedIn in Dublin, in Ireland, and learned about machine learning a bit more. And then I thought, okay, this is something that I want to explore. Really, I want to follow this path. And I stumbled upon conversational AI, which is a kind of, you know, one of the fields where you actually utilize machine learning. And you know, and this is where I am at now. You know, I'm in a role. I'm a dialogue designer working for a conversational AI company. So very windy.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's surely inspiring. The second question we have is, could you share about the area of your work and the kind of job role that you have in the present positions that you are holding? Debasri, would you like to go first?
Sure. So the projects that I did are mainly related to morphology, syntax, and semantics. Okay. So when I said that I joined with, developing Hindi WordNet. So Hindi WordNet is something, if you see, it's not a dictionary, it's not a thesaurus, but it's much more than that. Okay, because the idea was this. So Christina Philbin, she is the one who developed English WordNet in Princeton University. That was her research project. Okay. And the entire idea was this, that see the words as a net. And then the words which are relative, that means words which are synonym, they have some kind of, they share semantic relativeness, or they share syntactic relativeness. Even if we know that synonyms are not always, they are not exact synonyms, they can be distant synonyms. But that distance, there is a gradation, there can be a gradation. So it was totally, lexical semantics and syntax as well. Syntax in the sense, for English WordNet, if you see, they will give you the syntactic structure of a verb. Okay, so if a verb, it can take two arguments. If one argument is compulsory, one is optional. All this information are there, and based on that, lexical semantic relations were developed. So I started with that, and we didn't copy English WordNet. Instead, what we did, we took the idea from there and we tried to apply that for our language. Okay, and in this case, it was Hindi. So it was totally in that way. And then while working on that, what I found, that verbs are the most complex part, or the key part. Okay, so I shifted towards creating a verb net for Hindi. There also, at that time, the Beth Levin's verb net is there for English. It says about the syntactic alternations. And her theory is this, that verbs which share semantic relatedness, they are syntactically also, they are related. So I studied on those things and tried to find out. And why were I doing all these things? Because the entire idea was this: at that point of time, we were working on machine translation. Okay, so interlingua-based machine translation, and the obstacle was all these things. So how to distinguish between a bank as an institution, financial institution, and bank as a global bank. So it started, the classical question was this, and it started all with this. So to dig up the answer, we started with building the lexical knowledge bases, because knowledge base plays a very, very crucial role in any kind of, natural language processing projects, in anything, whatever you do in natural language processing. And knowledge bases are not only knowledge bases in the sense like you just give the meaning and you give the synonyms or the antonyms. No, it is not that. It is more than that. So it started from there, and I worked. So that is one thing. I started with a lexical database. Then all were because of machine translation. So I worked on interlingua-based machine translation, as well as I worked on manual machine translation, or rule-based machine translation, where I use this tagged grammar or tree adjoining grammar. So this is a very this has been developed by Professor Arvind Joshi. Professor Arvind Joshi in MIT. So he developed this this theory. So that was a transfer grammar type approach. Okay. So the transfer grammar means that from English to Hindi, in English, the syntactic tree will get transferred in Hindi, and it will work in that. So that is like with this transfer-based machine translation system using tree adjoining grammar. And I spent quite some time on machine translation projects before what I'm doing now. Now the same, you can say that similar things we are using to create a chatbot. So basically what I'm doing is making the machine artificially intelligent. The idea is this, that whatever I'm saying now, as you are perceiving, as you are understanding, the machine will also be able to understand. It might sound very simple, though interesting, but it's quite complex. And I think Martyna will already know because hers is also conversational MP. So yes, so this is all what about, so making the machine understand human language to enable a communication, human machine communication.
Thank you, Debasri. Martyna, would you share your job role specific?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so impressive to hear about the other speakers' projects, and I definitely can see parallels. How those technologies are being used and utilized in the private sector, and underlie those technologies that I'm working with. So I'm working as a dialogue designer in a conversational AI company. So conversational AI, as we have already heard, is an area of well, in a way, artificial intelligence that provides an interface for humans to communicate with the computer and vice versa. Yeah, so these are computer programs that enable us to communicate using our natural language, and it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. We take it for granted, but there are so many things involved in this process. Extra linguistics, context, So that's conversational AI, and what are those computer programs? Well, these are chatbots, these are voice bots, virtual assistants. Yeah, so we can write or we can speak to that computer program and hope for it to respond to us meaningfully. And I'm a dialogue designer. So what I do different things. There are different things involved in the process of developing a bot. For example, I mostly focus on creating intent taxonomies. So what is that? Well, basically, those computer programs, those chatbots, voice bots, are machine learning models, algorithms that learn through experience when they are given data. And we need to feed data into those algorithms so that they can actually learn and make decisions based on them. And it can't be just any data. You can't just feed text into the computer program and the algorithm and hope that it will understand. You need to point to different places and say, like, this is what it is, and then the computer can learn. The program can learn. So prepare that training data. So those intent taxonomies that I'm working on are like such sets of training data for those machine learning models, tagged, labeled. So we get data, which is for conversational AI. This is conversational data. Usually these are transcripts, a conversation between humans. And we label utterances, we tag utterances in those transcripts to tell the machine learning model, this is what they're talking about, this is what the person means, this is what the person wants, and this is our intent. In an utterance, if someone says, my bill is too high, why is that? If they, talk to a human agent who works at a telecommunications company, this is the intent of the person. They want to find out why the bill is too high. So, then the chatbot needs to be able to understand that, what the person wants, saying that in various different ways. because people can talk about the same thing in so many different ways. So that is our intent, that the meaning, the intention, the goal of the person in that utterance. And we organize those concepts, those intents, in taxonomies. So we want to take that data and want to structure it. And taxonomies are hierarchical representations of concepts, so that we can have like broader categories. You can imagine it as a tree, and it just it's got it's got the tree trunk, and then it's got branches. And those branches are our main topics. Yeah. So let's say if we talk about telecommunications, because I work with telco companies a lot, it's like billing or accounts or, I don't know, technical support. And these are our main concepts. And then under that, there are smaller branches going out of those. And, we have other kind of nodes under that. So these are intent taxonomies, kind of hierarchy. You just basically structure data in a hierarchical manner, so that then it can be fed into the model and enable the model to train on it. And then you give it new data that hasn't been labeled, and you check, do you actually understand? And that's how more or less it works. So I work on the intent taxonomies, but also that's one part of developing conversational solutions. Another thing is designing the conversation, because we talk and we do it naturally, but the computer doesn't know what to say first, not mentioning understand it, but that we already sort of covered it. So how do I proceed, how do I kind of go through that conversation? So you design a conversation. We talk about conversation flows. So how does the conversation flow? What do you start with? What do you say next? What's the response? What information do you get? You need to collect some information, like maybe the name of the customer, their phone number, what do you want? Maybe if they want to buy a new phone, what phone? What's the name of the brand? What's the color? Things like that. And those chatbots, they are designed. There's the conversation is architectured. So we just step by step say, this is what you ask. This is what the boss asks the customer. This is what probably the customer will reply. This is what the bot needs to do next. So I work on that a little bit as well. This is something that I'm exploring at the moment, conversation architecture. I'm dealing with a chatbot that is live and being used, and I also have to kind of analyze its performance. And okay, it's not doing well, it's not understanding what the user is saying, or it's not replying at all. Why is it happening? And then you look at the data and you try to figure out what's going on and how to fix that. So analysis and fixing, finding solutions is a big part of it. And so this is more or less what I'm doing.
Okay. You talked about being a dialogue designer, and how do we understand the difference between conversational AI and conversation design? How can we understand the difference between the two?
Yeah, so conversational AI is like a broader concept. It's just the technology that enables us humans to converse with computers. And conversation design is part of conversational AI. So conversation design is how we design the conversation. So how do we architecture this, the way the bot will talk with the human? Yeah. So how do we, you can imagine as a decision tree as well. In the past, that's how bots worked, so it starts here, and then, okay, if the customer says this, then it's going to say this. And, so this is our architecture, our concept of conversation design. Does that make sense? Maybe the other speaker would like to add, because I'm sure that she's got much more, in-depth knowledge in this area as well. So,
would you like to add anything to it, Debasri?
It's almost, yes, the same. So the first thing, yeah. So while developing something like a chatbot, it needs. So when I say like human-machine interaction, it means that yes, first thing, something the users is asking the chatbot. The chatbot needs to understand those things, what the user is asking for. And after that, the user should, the chatbot should reply back also, just like a, normal human conversation. So for example, if you, I think you all use one or other chatbots. So so for example, you asked a chatbot that show me the nearest restaurants. So the chatbot should understand that you're asking to search for restaurants. Okay, it should not show you something else. And while replying back, it should also reply that yes, see, here are some searches. It should not reply back to you in a way like something not acceptable or something which is very unnatural or funny. It should not be like that. And working with a live chatbot, yes, it's quite exciting, and at the same time it's quite risky because yes, you will get a list of things that see your chatbot doesn't understand. It is so common. I know it's very very common, a very simple question for a human being, but not for a chatbot.
Thank you so much to both the speakers. Okay, now we will move on to some of the questions from our students. The first question that we have is, what are the different prospects and opportunities for the linguistic students to work in the private sector in the Indian context as well as abroad? What are the scopes and opportunities for us as students of linguistics? Martyna, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I can speak for myself, living in Northern Ireland. I think that even my path kind of shows what you can do, there are so many different things and I've been through many of them. So, obviously, very traditional paths, translator. But, you don't have, and here you can be a written translator, you can be an interpreter. So, you can provide oral translation. And then you can be a translator but working for maybe an AI company because if you have a model that works for a particular language, then sometimes you might want to have that product localized into another to another country, another target audience. And you could work as a translator, translating that language data for that particular model. So translator, you could be a teacher. I'm not sure if you have such paths at your university, but I had a chance to study teaching methodology. And I studied English, so you could be an English teacher. You could work with students, international students, as I did. Then you could be an editor or a proofreader if you have such an in-depth knowledge of language and that attention to detail and understanding of the context, cultural context, and language style, and all of that. You could be an editor, a proofreader. You could be a data annotator if you're kind of getting into the text space, but you still don't have any maybe knowledge yet of the ML and no experience. This is a very good way of getting into that space, and this is what I did. Yeah. So you just start with junior roles. And then you can climb your way up. You can learn more, and then you can work as a perhaps engineering linguist. And there are so many different names for that, like engineering linguist, data linguist, computational linguist, right? So there'll be lots of names. You might get confused, but just read the descriptions always, and then you will know more or less what the role is about. And if we move into the conversational AI space that we were talking about, then you can be a conversation designer, conversation architect, dialogue designer. These are just same names for the same thing. Or a conversation bot engineer, and that is maybe a little bit more technical, but again, it depends on the company and what they mean by the name of the role. So I think there's such a big scope, and you can start with those junior roles, and then the more tech you learn, then you can change roles, you can climb your way up, and you can do more engineering oriented work. So yeah.
Thank you. Debasri.
Yeah, okay. So basically what she said, yeah, the same thing I also want to say that see, linguistics is quite different from all other fields. It's not very easy path. So any one of you, it wouldn't be easy. But at the same time, I'm not saying that it won't be possible. I'm not hearing you. There are many opportunities these days. But you'll have to start from the beginning. So first, if you think that yes, you want to pursue career here in this field, then focus on those things. And yes, translating things. So if you get a job of translating, don't think that it is a very small job. It's not a linguist's role. It is nothing like that, because when we started with this interlingua machine translation project with Professor Pushpa Bhattacharya. So he used to spend time with us, and he used to ask us also. He also used to do the translations for himself. You know why? Just to get a good understanding. Because if you get the understanding, then only you will be able to make the machine learn. See it in a way like how do you teach? Say if you have to teach something to someone, how will you teach? You will have to know. I'll have to be the master for that. Then only I can go and teach. So similarly, what we are doing here, our task is much more complex because we are teaching a robot, a machine. So we need to understand what are the things. So I know, like, if anyone asks me, like, to translate a sentence from English to Bangla, I'll do that easily because that is my native speakers, intuition, my knowledge of my language and everything. But the machine, how the machine needs to perceive, what all clues the machine need to understand that thing. Those things become clear with all these things. So yes, you can start with translation gradually, annotation at the same time when you are doing your morphology, you are doing syntax, you are doing basically whenever you are studying linguistics. So the focus on your linguistic 101 courses, that is primary, that I have found all through the years. So if you do data annotation, whatever annotation you are doing, you should know why you are annotating and what you are annotating, because all these things come from that knowledge. So these things, yes, and then eventually you can pursue your career there, so that understanding will come.
Thank you for letting us know about the different prospects. Okay, my next question is, after pursuing a master's degree in linguistics, what kind of skills or requirements should a candidate have before applying for a job in the private sector, if he's looking for a job in the private sector? Or to put it in another way, what kind of skills or technical requirements you would be looking for in the candidate as recruiters? Devashriti, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So basically, see, when I actually look for good linguistic knowledge and language, because that's primary. So
Core linguistic part.
Yes, core linguistics, and for the language that you are coming, how far you understand that. It might not be, might not be the native speaker of that language. That is fully okay, but your understanding. Yes. And I believe that as a linguist, we can work on any language. If we have the data, we have all these things, we have the basic, we know the basic technique to work, we will be able to work. So, and remember, the basic focus is given like the linguistic knowledge. So you should, you might be asked to, do a part of speech tagging. So you should know what is what. You should not tag a participial as something else. You might be asked to draw a syntax tree. You might be asked to do a syntactic annotation. So you should know the syntactic structure. That is necessary. So that is something which the major focus is given to that. Apart from that, most of the things are now built with Python, and Python is very much, linguist friendly, I can say. If you know how to write a syntactic rule, you will be able to read the rule for Python, or you will be able to do Python. That is not the point. The basic point is the logic which you need to understand. And that will come from the linguistic knowledge from our courses working.
Would any kind of technical requirements that can help and additional technicalities that is required in the candidate to get an edge for the job in the private sector? Is it important?
Technical knowledge, what do you mean, like programming knowledge particularly, or
not programming language, like us as linguists, we wouldn't be knowing that. But apart from the linguistics, the core part, the core knowledge of language, being technically friendly.
see, I guess now people are technically friendly. I see people joining and they are much more, technically familiar than me. So, so I'm technically familiar in the sense, one thing which actually matters is there are various tools in NLP, like NLTK and such. So if you have knowledge of those things, but what I prefer, like for a fresher to complete masters and getting knowledge of NLTK might not help. That might be little difficult. So having a little background of NLP and after that entering into some courses, that's quite easy. And that you can also do while you can do it side by side, because those are not full-time courses. There are many courses available for NLP. Those you can do, of course. That is helpful. That will be helpful for your career, and yes, an added benefit, of course. Programming language is also the same. Like if you know linguistics, you will be able to do that. So again, I'll come back to that point only. Might be
We have a next question that talks about the programming language and other.
Yes.
Okay. Martyna, would you like to know?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of ideas here. So the first thing that I would like to say is that if we talk about requirements, is that the diploma is not, or certificate is not always required. Of course, check that what sort of role you're applying for, and what country you're applying in, because if you want to work abroad, but I think we're gonna talk about that later on, maybe that might be required as well. But don't focus that much on the certificates when it comes to requirements. Focus on the skills. What can you actually do? Employers look for skills that you can demonstrate, and it starts with the interview. If you can talk about situations where you applied those skills, talk about some projects that you did, this is the skills are core. So what are those skills? We talked about language proficiency. This is just the basic requirement. So really good comprehension of that language, so be it English language or any other language. And you can tell it a few minutes into the conversation with the person, whether they're comfortable with this language, what their vocabulary range is, and so on. Of course, there's stress when we talk about interviews and so on, and it will influence how we talk. But English proficiency, language proficiency, comprehension, reading comprehension is so key. You know, do you understand when you read a text? Can you, you know, scan it? You know, get the gist of it? You know, pretty quickly. But then, can you actually look for details in the text? You know, like what's your attention to detail? It's very important. Accuracy, you know, in your work, consistency. You know, if you're labeling, for example, you know, you need to be consistent. You need to be able to make your own judgments. So now I'm kind of getting into the soft skills. Yes, make your own judgments, but at the same time be able to collaborate, to you know, to ensure that consistency, collaborate with team. So, you know, research skills, so important. And we learned that at the university already, yes? Critical thinking, analysis, you know, we were talking about, you know, debugging chatbots. Like, you need to analyze, you need to be able to think what's happening here. But for, of course, we are interested in hard skills, yes, tech skills. People always ask that question. So yes, it is Python. Python, when it comes to programming languages, Python is the most popular and the most user-friendly. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more maybe. But Python is the programming language for, you know, conversational AI here, or NLP. And in general, you know, being comfortable with the computer, you know, like, you know, using but as we said, like nowadays people are digital natives, you know. So like for me, I you know, I had to learn a lot, you know. But you know, all of your, you know, collaboration tools, or all of your Microsoft Office suite, or Google Docs and spreadsheets. Don't worry, you don't have to know all of the formulas, but you need to be able to search for information. So that ability to search for information and find out solutions is actually key, and it will be more important sometimes than knowing everything. But these are your collaboration tools, you know, Slack, Microsoft Teams, or whatever. You know, just be comfortable with using those. Zoom, Google Meet, and also task management tools, Jira, Asana, Trello. Yeah, using Kanban methodology. But these are things that you can learn, you know, you can learn. But if you can expose yourself to them before you actually get the job, it's good, because then you'll be more comfortable, you know, when you actually start working. Command line, this is something that might be useful for you, you know, the command line tools. So like I didn't know how to use that before I actually started working in tech, you know. But you might need to be able to use the command line to set up your work environment. Maybe not, you know, for everyday tasks, but, you know, sometimes some of the tools that are being used, you know, might utilize that. So that it will be good, you know, to do some basic course in that. You know, you might also like to familiarize yourself with some code editors. You know, if you're learning Python, code editors is like Visual Studio Code, for example. You know, these are really nice tools that, you know, make it easier to program and so on. Version control, like Git, GitHub. You know, but this is if you really are programming. I don't use it at work every day, but you know, I learned a little bit about that. And you know, if you're working with code, well, then version control is key. What else? I just have a list here because I don't want to forget anything. And yes, we're, you know, Python, different libraries. You mentioned NLTK, you know, for text analysis. What else? And you know, if we talk about conversational AI, well, we've got different platforms for building virtual agents, and it really depends on, you know, what vendor you're working with. So like I, for example, work with Google's Dialogflow. So, you know, there are labs out there. You can do labs, you know, you can learn how to use that platform. There are courses out there as well. there are other platforms, for developing virtual agents. Amazon Lex, IBM Watson. I think Microsoft might have something as well. And they're just more and more. There are more and more of them out there, and this is something actually maybe a good space to maybe explore. And if you want to build something yourself, if you're that technical. And tools for dialogue design, conversation design. If you get into that space, there are different tools for that are used for architecture and conversations. Voice flow, bot society, I think it's been discontinued recently. So yeah, and at the very end, soft skills, I just want to kind of underline that, because if you don't have those soft skills, and if you're very good technically, you're not going to be a good team worker, and it's so important, to be able to collaborate, to reach out to people. If you don't know something, I'm just seeing that myself, in my work. The more successful people are those that actually can reach out to others, say they're overwhelmed or they need some advice, so always just reach out to people, talk, don't feel you're on your own, and managers will really appreciate that, if you can actually build good relationships at work, and communicate. Of course, you want to be able to work independently, to take initiative, that is very valued, but you need to collaborate, and you need to say if something is not working, if you're struggling, because it's not only about you, it's also about the product that it might not perform, so communication is so important, and prioritizing, task management is so huge. I'm still experience, kind of trying to improve that, but these are the skills that soft skills that are employers will be looking for.
Thank you so much. Okay. My next question would be, what kind of job role can a linguist have in the private sector in general, and the role of a linguist in natural language processing? Debasri, would you like to go first?
As a linguist, we are in private sector, so it depends like what type of job you are doing. So there are different kinds of. Now, for my area, as a linguist, we are supposed to understand the nature, the aim of the project, what I'm doing, and what would be the contribution as a linguist. So there can be many things, you might be asked to develop a guideline, develop a semantic guidelines, okay, wherein those will be used for manual annotation, say semantic annotation. And finally, based on that, might be an algorithm will be developed, which will be used for machine learning, where the machine will then start annotating automatically. There can be something. There can also be something like this, that there is a guideline already, and now what you need to do is you need to do annotation, syntactic or semantic annotation. So say, for example, you have to do pause tagging, you have to do syntactic annotation, and you prepare a context. It can be It can even be of that type, like say, for example, you are given like a topic is given to you, or a domain is given to you, and you are said that, see, consider you are the user. So you are building a corpus there, okay, and you will be asked, like, if you are a user, what all things will come to your mind, and how will you ask the question? So in that case, at that point of time, you are building the corpus. Then there can also be things like what all things you, when I say like we are making the machine intelligent, okay, how we are making the machine intelligent, we are making it learn the things. Okay, so you will need to focus on uh, how the machine, or what all things you are making the machine to learn. Okay, so that in actual scenario the machine can perform well, or the machine's performance can go high. So what all things you need to include. And there can be several things. There can be things like, again, there can be data annotation. There can be some manual support, like providing with some rules. If you're giving the rules, then what kind of rules, and how will you do it so that your rules are economical and flexible? Or say, for example, as a linguist, what's the magic that you can show, that you can develop a template, and from within that single template you can generate 5 to 10 more messages, something like that. So basically, as a linguist, in my area of work, we focus on all these things, and of course thinking analytically, what more, what I can do. If you see that the performance is not good, even though you have given everything. So it is very common, like I included everything, I included all the patterns, I included all support and everything, but still machine's performance is low. So you need to think analytically that what else is needed, or by which you can improve the performance of the machine. So that is when I say we think analytically, of course, from linguistic point of view. So basically, these are two.
Are there any advantages that a computational linguist gets when he gets into a job in the private sector, like students who haven't studied computational linguistics in their courses and those who have? So do they get any kind of advantages if they are willing to work in the private sector in comparison to the ones who haven't studied computational linguistics?
Yes, of course, computational linguists will get some advantage, in the sense like they will have an understanding. So see, computational linguistics is the domain where it helps in this human and machine interaction. So the person who is studying linguistics and computational linguistics, so that person will think in terms of that, like what all things should be included, or what will help the machine to make the interaction much more natural, or successful. So in that way, of course, computational linguists, they get an advantage. But you know what? Computational linguistics is actually, uh, you need to know linguistics. Without linguistics, you cannot. So it's a merge between a linguist and a computer engineer. So basically, if you see in our country, for many of the computer science degrees, where they have this computational, where people opt for computational linguistics, they have mandatory, they have to go through linguistics 101 courses. So that is mandatory. So in that way, actually, some this sort of knowledge, or say, for example, when I say logic for programming language, this sort of knowledge for a linguist will be very helpful, because that will help you to understand, like as a linguist, what you can do to make the machine understand better, or make the machine perform better.
Okay. Thank you. Martyna, would you go with the question?
We've said so much about that, but I think you do have an advantage if you have background in computational linguistics. And I'm just saying it from my own experience, because I didn't study computational linguistics, and I had to start with those more junior roles, with data annotation, before actually being able to do more of a linguistic, computational linguist job. So if you don't have that background, you might need to start with data annotation. If you have that background in computational linguistics, you might be the one who is actually leading those annotation projects, for example. Yes, as we just said, you would be the person who is designing those annotation tasks, building the guidelines. Yes, as we said, ensuring consistency in the annotation process, adjudicating any disagreements. And also, leading a little team perhaps, or maybe a bigger team, it depends, so there's some project management involved, leadership, that you can, put yourself out there and try those things. So you have an advantage. But again, if you haven't studied computational linguistics, don't worry, you can still do it. You don't have to have a degree. You just need to figure out what are those skills that we already talked about. Yeah. And step by step, just acquire those skills. You can do it on your own. You can do courses. Yes, you can network with people. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So there is an advantage, but you can still do it, and don't get discouraged if you haven't studied computational linguistics.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. My next question is for Debasri. Does pursuing a PhD provide any added advantages in getting a job in the private sector? If yes, then which areas or topics one should choose to work upon during their PhD degree?
So, see, as I said, that when I was studying linguistics, linguistics, I think still linguistics is basically a research-oriented subject. So we started with this line in Sanskrit College. I remember that it is not a job-oriented subject. If you pass, you graduate from your college and you get a job. So we knew this, and of course, that is why before even coming to this field, I started studying for PhD. So, in what field you want to do PhD, that might be something, I should say, that might be your choice, your passion. Okay. Coming to private sector, there are many kind of opportunities now in private sector, not only NLP. There are various things that's going on for linguists. Okay. And so, there is something forensic linguistics, and there are many things actually now. And I could see some of my juniors joining some of these companies. So that is one thing. So private sector is not only NLP or machine learning. In case if you are talking about NLP and machine learning, then of course if you have a knack towards applied linguistics, if you have a knack towards syntax, semantics, morphology, phonology, if these sort of things excites you and you don't get bored in these things, then of course you should choose something from there. And how a PhD helped me is in the sense that yes, a much more opportunity to dig in, what all things that those are possible. That was one way. So once when you are into research, you will be studying various things, right? You will be consulting, you will be going through different research papers. That will give you visibility. You will be able to understand, yes, and also you never know. You might be doing PhD. You started PhD with something, but then while going through the readings and everything, you might quickly shift to another. That is also quite possible. So yes, since this is a research-oriented subject, of course, PhD will give you much more visibility. You will be able to focus on, but PhD is not at all mandatory for this field, because there are many people who are working who are successful without a PhD. That is also key. But if whether or not you are pursuing PhD, that is not the point. The point is this: if you are joining a field like this, you will have to remember that there will be a lot of research. Because whenever you see, you go for debugging, you go for anything like something is not working, you start your analysis from there. and you never know who might reach to your PhD.
Right. Martyna, would you like to add anything to it?
I think that has covered everything. I haven't studied PhD, I haven't done PhD, so I don't think I have anything to add here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We talked about various courses and ways where we can learn these kind of, get these knowledge about working in this field. So do private companies provide any kind of courses or internships for postgraduate students before they recruit? Or are there any funding schemes provided by them in abroad? Martyna?
So definitely, there are internships out there, and as part of the internship, you can get training. You have access to courses, to different labs, to acquire hands-on skills on how to use different technologies. So I can, I'm not sure about funding schemes, but I can talk about, if you get a job, do you have any training available? And yes, you have. And this is great. And it's often for free. Yeah. So you don't have to pay for it, because some of those things are really expensive. Not everyone can afford it, obviously. So yes, you can definitely have access to different courses, different labs, as I said. I'm not sure about funding schemes, but maybe the other speaker will.
Where do we come to know about these different accesses? Like there are some websites or where we come to know about different courses,
internships. I think that there's this this analogy of an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg and the rest is underwater. Like, I don't know, 80%. And you can do you can do your search. You can go to those job search websites. Yes, but this is the tip of the iceberg. Then you've got also companies' websites. This is still the tip of the iceberg, and the rest is what you create, what you dig out. So I think what's important is to actually reach out to companies, reach out to startups, reach out to NGOs, different organizations that are, do something in line with what you're interested in, and create opportunities for yourself. And then who knows, maybe you'll create an opportunity for an internship for yourself. Yeah. And maybe they will be able to also provide you with training and so on. So I would encourage that, because I have done it myself. And, I was amazed to see that opportunities are out there. If you ask for it, you get it. Okay. So please remember that this is not on, that the opportunities are not only the things that you see when you Google it. There's much more. So this is what I would like to really recommend. And I can recommend some maybe learning resources. When it comes to training available at the company, well, this is something that, when you get a job, then you can explore, what training is available. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Martyna. Debasri, would you like to add your recommendations to it?
Yeah, sure. So yes, there are few companies who do give internships, and might be one good thing, as former speaker she said. Additionally, the linguist list we get to see something. Also, you might sometime also come see internships, or some courses, short-term courses from different universities, foreign universities, and they have collaboration with different private companies. So you can try those things as well. Those will also be very helpful. And yes, there are few companies, and if once when you are into a job, for most of the companies there are courses which you can do, which are free of cost, and for some companies there are mandatory courses yes, related to NLP and this. So those things also you can.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to the next question. What do you think are the future scopes for transcriptionists and translators in the private sector, both in the Indian context and in the abroad? And where do we get to know about these kind of openings? Apart from searching for the specific companies, what is the scope of transcriptionists and translators in the private sector? Debasri, would you like to go first?
Frankly speaking, I really don't have that idea, since this is not very much related to my
Okay.
But what I can say is there are several companies in which you can go for freelancing. So that is one thing. And sometimes there are some short time requirements. Yes. Phonetic transcription is, yes, you might get to know from the mails and all these things, because those are mostly short time requirements. So something you can.
You know of a few companies that hire transcriptionists, aware of one or two companies as such?
Actually, frankly speaking, no. What I know about is all these things, that if they're hired, also hired for a very short period.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Martyna, would you like to add?
Yeah, there's a company called Appen, APPEN, and they are a global company that they crowdsource different projects in the artificial intelligence space, including transcription, phonetic transcription, data annotation, translation. They look for linguists from various countries with different language pairs. So check this out, because I started working for this company, freelancing. So the money maybe isn't great, but it's a way to get in, So this is how you can start. So you can check this out. I'm not really. There's actually another company called We Localize, and you need to check this out. I'm not sure about the language pairs, but you can do freelance translation work for them, localization. I'm not sure if they do transcription. There is also a company called Lion Bridge. They also employ people on maybe temporary basis as well, linguists, data annotators. So check these out. As for the kind of opportunities in general, and how what's the return, these are usually, I would say, kind of freelance jobs, transcription and translation. At least from my experience. Of course, you can be an in-house translator for a company, and if you are, that's great, and there are opportunities like that. But a lot of jobs are kind of freelance jobs, which means that the stream of income is not always that stable. So you need to remember that. So maybe you would like to start doing that kind of part-time, and have something else to sustain you. And because I've been through that, again, it depends on the language pair. If your language pair is competitive, then you've got more chances of getting even more stable job and better paid job. And also it depends on your specialization for translation, because you can be a translator, but you can specialize in different domains. Yes, if you've got some legal background or medical background or technical background, then you can translate text from this domain, and then you're more competitive. So if you want to be a translator, remember about that if you can specialize, this is something that's going to give you advantage. Yeah, so this is, if your heart lies there, explore that. If you're more into tech, try this company Appen, Lionbridge, Relocalize. They do a little bit of data annotation stuff, and this is how you can, try to get into that industry, and then get more, advanced jobs, basically. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we'll move on to an interesting question. Given the growing interest in entrepreneurship in India and the current rise in startups in our country, can we think of a linguistic startup, or can there be scopes of creating job opportunities for linguistic students? Can we think of that kind of a startup? Debasri.
Yes, of course, that can be thought of course, and provided you have the skills, you have contacts from where you will be getting the projects and all those things, you have all those things. Surely we can think of it.
Okay. Martyna, would you like to give your input?
Yeah, I want to say that if I knew, then I wouldn't tell you. But I think that there definitely is space, and there's this opportunity to create and starting with kind of simpler solutions, like building maybe a bot, that does something. Okay, like I don't know, like I recently heard about a project where people used one of the voice assistants like Siri or Google, Google Assistant, to help lonely people in elderly homes. Not to be that lonely, to support them, for example. Yeah, so or you could maybe help to improve machine learning models for less popular languages, or for people with speech impairment, because those data sets are not that inclusive. Also for different, ethnicities. Thank you. That was a hard word. So you could start with things like that. Yeah. But like thinking bigger, maybe as I said, like those virtual agent development platforms are really growing. They're popping up. So maybe creating something like that. But this this requires more advanced skills. Creating synthetic voices or voice generation is a thing as well. So there's a scope there. Data sets also, companies acquire data sets. They need data sets because how do you train those machine learning models? So curating data sets for machine learning, I'm dealing with that, all the time. Being able to provide those data sets for particular domains, and then providing data sets maybe in a more structured form as well, for like conversational AI, those intent taxonomies, maybe if you could provide that training data that's already curated and someone can just plug it into their bot, that saves a lot of time. So there definitely is scope there.
Thank you so much for answering to the questions. Like we always as linguists are into studying and analyzing structures of different languages, and it's quite interesting and intriguing to understand how to fit those structure into a machine, and not just the structure. There are so many different extra linguistic factors as well. So it's very interesting and it's intriguing to get to know that. So now we'll move on to the questions that we have gathered from our comment section on YouTube. So I'll request Oishurjo to take over from here. Thank you so much to both the speakers. Oishurjo.
Thank you, Rajeshwari. So we have some questions here. The first question is from my classmate Shainika Dotto. Can you suggest any universities or mediums where we can pursue the computational linguistic course? and after the course of the computational linguist, what are the job opportunities opened? Are there any job opportunities in the private sector without computational linguistics course? The speakers have answered this, the job opportunities about the computational linguistics. So I'll request the speakers to answer the other two one. Debasri.
Yes, so there are many universities abroad which actually they deal with computational linguistics. Yes. Here, if you get a chance to, at least I know about IIT Bombay, where the humanities department, they have a collaboration with computer science department, from wherein I did my PhD. So there is a collaboration where you can get through this computational linguistics. Also, EFLU, they also provide a computational courses on computational linguistics. It's good for that. And yes, what's the next question? Could you please repeat?
Are there any job opportunities in the private sector without computational linguistics course?
No, of course, because there are opportunities, and you can, if you have the linguistic skills, and if you get to see a job. Currently, we see there are many openings which are coming actually, and they are only asking for linguistics. So once when you join, while you work with your experience, basically you get to know about computational linguistics as well, and you get to do some courses which are available, which you can do side by side. So in that way, yes, it's a positive answer.
Martyna ma'am, your opinion?
Yeah, I think we've we've already covered some of those questions. All the different jobs available, but absolutely, you can do it. You can get a job without a diploma in computational linguistics. You can be a conversation designer, without a degree in computational linguistics. And as for the resources, maybe because I'm not that familiar with the universities and the programs that are available there, but as for the resources, because I'm learning as well on my own, there are tons out there, there are tons out there really, and some of them are for free. So I think Stanford has some resources available for NLP, so you can Google that. There are platforms where you can do those courses in machine learning, NLP, Python programming, basics, programming basics. So you've got Udacity. Udacity. Then you have Udemy. You've got Coursera, which is probably very popular, and those courses are not that expensive. Yeah, so you can do that. Like I did a course from Coursera in programming for everybody from University of Michigan. 30 euro. Like it wasn't crazy. And then you can do Python for beginners, Python more advanced, and so on. Udacity's got a nice course called AI programming with Python, and this one is more for people who are actually interested how those models work. So if you want to learn how you will learn the basics of Python, you will learn your version control, you will learn environments, Anaconda, which is used for managing environments, so different versions of Python. You will learn how machine learning models are built, and you'll try to build one yourself, although not from scratch. It's not easy at all. But if someone is more into I want to explore machine learning engineering, this is something that might be interesting for you. I'm old-fashioned, so I like books. There's one publisher called O'Reilly, and they've got loads of books, in the machine learning space, language annotation. I got a few of those here. One is called natural language annotation. I know it's a mirror image, you can't really see it that well, but it's O'Reilly. So this is for language annotation. For conversational AI, there's a great book recently published. It's called Conversations with Things. I know, again, you can't see that well. Conversations with Things. And it's, if you want to learn conversation design. There's a great book about artificial intelligence if someone wants to learn the basics. It's called, you can't see it, You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. It is a funny title, but it really tells you about how, artificial intelligence works for beginners. And it's really fun to read. There are many other books. If you're interested, reach out. I can share or other courses as well. So these are the resources, but I really want to encourage you to get hands-on experience. So doing labs, like Google Dialogflow labs, if you want to build virtual agents, you can do that. They're not that expensive. And then try to build your own things, do projects, create your own things. So some of those companies, they give you like free trial. You don't really have to pay for the resources, so you can maybe try to build a bot yourself. For data annotation, there are different platforms that you might be using. Some of them, you have to pay for them, are available to companies, but there are some open source out there as well. One is called BRAT, B-R-A-T, and it's for named entity recognition. So, maybe you want to try this out, to see how that works, how to annotate name entities. I know I'm kind of expanding maybe the question, but I really want to recommend reaching out to communities, connecting with people, finding study groups or creating study groups, and networking is so huge. It was so important for me in my own experience. And there are, NGOs, there are organizations out there that provide support, for people switching careers or trying to get into a certain job market, certain area. For women, for example, Women in Voice, it's a great community. You can connect and learn. They do free webinars. Women in Jesus, I don't remember now. The Women in Data, another one. There's loads. So loads of resources. You just need to reach out.
Thank you so much. The next question is from Martyna ma'am. This question is from our head of the department, Aditi ma'am. Does theories in pragmatics, especially conversational implicature, help in intent analysis?
In a way, yes, because how do we use language, and how do we ask about things in different ways? We say one thing and we want something else. So for me, when I work with training phrases for intents, you have to think about how a person might ask for something in various different ways. And sometimes people say something, one thing, and they mean another thing, so it's language in use, what's the actual meaning, of something that we say. But personally, what I have really kind of found very useful is just that very good knowledge of grammar and the mechanics of language, and just understanding that language is, that there are so many different elements in it. And for example, for boosting model performance, you need to provide various ways of how people speak about things. And if you can look at the language data, the utterances, and figure out, okay, this is that structure, this is that linguistic pattern, and this is something else, you don't want to be repeating the same thing over and over again. So I think, just having that sensitivity, of the different patterns in language has helped me a lot. But research skills, critical thinking skills, analysis, these are the most important things, I think. And also, understanding of different language registers and styles, like how do people ask about things, in different contexts. So for myself, these are the things that I have taken from the university and applied it at work. But again, I'm not working at very cutting edge, in-depth projects. So maybe I'm not utilizing some of that knowledge that I learned at the university. But parts of speech grammar, yes, for tagging and so on. Yeah.
Debasri, would you like to add something to it?
Yes, basically, the thing is, almost all things she has shared. So we need to think from that point, that perspective, what all things to include and what all not. So yes, so they definitely.
The next question is from Ovik Shorkar. What are your thoughts on linguistic student prospects in the private sector in the coming years? Debasri.
Could you repeat the question once again? I couldn't hear you.
Yes. What are your thoughts on linguistic students' prospects in the private sector in the coming years?
Yes. Coming years, if we see, we can see these things. So see, now it is the totally an era of not only digitalization but also a bot era. So everything we want to make the bot to perform. So from that point of view, to make and the key point here is, of course, language. So the bot needs to understand the language, and bot needs to perform understanding that. Okay. So, and of course, when it is language, then it is only linguistics and nothing else. So that way, I think we should think in that.
Martyna, ma'am, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities, and in a way, with the learning resources being so widely available, I think that those opportunities will be growing because people will be able to just acquire that additional education, especially when it comes to technical skills. So I think yes, and also following on that note that conversational AI solutions are really growing in force. Definitely, those jobs for conversation designers and conversation architects, there's many, more and more of them. So I think that this is it's a good direction, and especially if you can, if you're willing to learn technology, and if you want to get into that space, if you're interested in that artificial intelligence space, there are jobs out there. But you need to be willing to learn the technology and start, acquiring those skills yourself. So you haven't made a mistake choosing that course, and you can still choose that course. And especially if you do computational linguistics, you'll have a job.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Onindita Ray. Since the speakers highlighted the importance of coding languages, I would like to know the difference in the job profile of a computer science engineer and that of a computational linguist. Is there any scope for other linguistic branches like social linguistics in the private sector? Debasri.
Yes. So from computer science engineer, there is a difference between a computer science engineer and a computational linguist. Both are computer engineers, but one with computer engineer with linguistic skills, and the other one only with the development competition as a computer engineer. So computer engineer, you can see as, developing things, making things in that line. And computational linguists, they are always involved into this human and machine interaction. Anything related to this field, they are I do know about some other branches. Some companies, they do work on these branches, but personally, I have never pursued, so I cannot give the names. But there are branches, like, yes, as I've mentioned in one of the answers, like forensic linguistics. I know like some of the people, some of my batchmates, or I know some people who work and they are from, linguistic background. They are linguists, so they work. Social linguistics, I am not sure of, but there might be some. And who knows, like the way like we are going, the way the research is developing, we don't know. Sometimes we might need this as well.
Martyna, ma'am.
Yeah, so we've already talked about the differences between a computer engineer and engineering linguist. And I think that companies are really realizing at the moment that it's really important to have people from those non-technical backgrounds, strictly non-technical backgrounds, because you can't really build products of good quality if you have only tech-oriented people. You need people with that understanding of language, of understanding of culture, what are all of those implications, and how we communicate as humans if we talk about conversational AI. So if you're a linguist, you'll be probably doing less programming and more of analysis of language, and analyzing the outputs of machine learning models and trying to figure out, how to improve the performance of a machine learning model. If you're a computer engineer, like machine learning engineer, then you are, kind of responsible for the machine learning model itself. When we talk about those roles in conversational AI, especially those new roles as conversation designers, there's no straight path to those. So people come from different disciplines, linguistics, maybe journalism, teaching, and I think that they bring a lot of valuable, experiences and insights into that. So do not think that if you're not a computer engineer, that you not bring value. You bring a lot of value. And I think at the moment, companies need those people with more, knowledge and understanding of language than, just pure programming skills.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from our professor, Meena ma'am. Is the private sector interested in working with minority languages also? Debasri.
Right now, I do not think, because, the field that I am working on, it's mostly, user driven. The language which is most popular by the users. Yeah. So the private companies, and they work for, the profit and everything. So of course. So right now, no, I don't think that the minority languages.
Martyna ma'am.
Yeah, I agree that it's all business, yes, and what brings most revenue will be prioritized. So, well, unfortunately, we're seeing this bias towards English and maybe other languages as well. But I guess that will be changing, but very slowly. So we need to acknowledge that. And probably the only thing that we can do is to create opportunities where we actually explore those minority languages. And there are startups, and there are initiatives like that. So if you're interested in that, and if you want to create something yourself, maybe you can think about maybe developing a machine learning model, for this particular minority language. But you need to remember that if you want to make some money on it, it has to have users and there has to be demand. So, always kind of keep that in mind.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question from our professor Obijit sir. Do you think that knowing more than one language may become helpful for the students who want to do with NLP? If we like to design a paper in computational linguistics at the level of PG, which path should be given primary focus? Debasri?
Yes, knowing multiple language, at least in our scenario, as for India, yes, it is always a benefit. It helps in multiple ways. Not only like you can work in multiple languages, but at the same time you can think from different aspects. So that is something which is very helpful. You can try using different features and those kind of information. Yes. And for the computational linguistics course, yes. So basically, we should, if we have a course like that, then it should first give the focus on the workflows that are used in NLP or machine learning. So that is one thing which is going to help. So how the what are the processes or the workflows and detail of those things, that should be the primary thing which should be included in any such course.
Martyna ma'am.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Knowing multiple languages, it is an advantage. And, I'm seeing that myself. If you know multiple languages, you might be able to take part in various projects when, products are being localized to different, target users. So it gives you an advantage if you have that free bandwidth to learn a foreign language, additional language too. But I think that if you have to kind of choose between like learning a programming language and a foreign language, if you already speak English, I would maybe go for a programming language, but it's always an individual choice.
Thank you so much. So we have a comment from our head of the department, Aditi ma'am. Thank you for underlining the importance of collaboration and solidarity for working in a team. This is an important skill in other parts of the life as well. So we have a last question. The question is from Triptish Dash. Can you please elaborate more about computational bot engineering that you mentioned earlier and how it is different from other fields of linguistics? If you want to add something new to this, Debasri.
Computational linguistics is different in the sense, like, yes, basic things doesn't change as it is a branch of linguistics. So of course you have to know linguistics in the sense, like, yes, much more focus on phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics, lexicography, all these things. Yes, you have to have a very good knowledge of these things. And in computational linguistics, what is more that extra that you will be able to learn, that is what the how you are making the machine to learn. Okay, the algorithm, those are designed why and how. Okay, so that logic, that analysis starting from data. So see, if you think this, it comes from this idea of psycholinguistics. Okay, so the basic is there. So think from the point of view of making a child learning a language. How do you go there? How do you do? The same philosophy is actually used. Okay, so if you are developing a chatbot, the first thing that you need to do is you need to have data. So the chatbot should understand how will you do that. You need to give data. You need to feed data. Now that is one process. Data, again, what kind of data? What all things do you have to mention as in data? So say I'll give a simple example, might help. So say for example, when one asks me like, what is your name? So I understand that the key of this sentence is name. Okay. So something, the human brain, it parses in that way. Similar question, if it is asked to the bot, how will you make the bot understand that this is the name? So here is your linguistic knowledge, where you have to do what we call in our language, we call this as data annotation. Okay. Now, from computational point of view, you need to think that how this you are going to make the machine learn. Okay. So say, for example, you have some data, you have various data like what is your name? What are the recent movies going on? Can you give me some pictures of cats? Do you find any similarity in this data? No. Now remember, to make the robot understand this, we need to have a similarity, okay? So when I say similarity, it is something like when you have some, say what is your name? Now, in how many ways I can say this? Because the user might not say every time the same thing. The queries will be different because we do not repeat our sentences, right? So those kind of things you are going to learn from a computational perspective, okay? Then you need to know the algorithm by which now you make the machine, you give data, you give data, you did annotation, you made the machine learn those things. Now next is this, that you need to make the machine, you need to check this performance of the machine, right? So what will be your metrics to check the performance? That is another thing which you will learn from the computational perspective. And when you see that, yes, you give data and machine couldn't recognize some of the patterns, that is again from a linguist's point of view, what are the things that the machine couldn't recognize? So what should be done, or what kind of support should be given so that the machine can recognize these things successfully? That is from a linguist point of view. Now, there are different kinds of scoring, okay? A scoring can be performance measurement or scoring. It can be based on, all the patterns that you have given. So you can see this as a, something as a syllabus that you were taught in your class. Questions coming from the syllabus and questions coming out of the syllabus, but from the same topic. So there are these two perspectives. So these things you will be learning from the computational perspective, where you need to know how to measure, what all should be included to measure this. Okay. So your machine performed well in, from the questions which are given in the syllabus. That means the data that you have provided. But for similar kind of things, say, what is your name? Similar kind of patterns are there which were not included in your data. It came from different users, and your machine couldn't recognize, or your machine could recognize. How are you going to validate that? Okay, so again, this thing you are going to learn from the computational perspective. So this is basically you can say a blending of how to use the computational, how to use linguistics from computational perspective to make the machine intelligent. Does that sound better, or did I confuse you all?
No, ma'am, better. Martyna, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, so the difference between a computational linguist job and a conversation bot engineer job, because I think that was one of the questions there. So conversation bot, not every use of language is necessarily conversational. So if you are a conversation bot engineer, you're dealing with conversational data and building conversations. If you're a computational linguist and you don't work in conversational AI space, you might be dealing with other users of language. Yeah. So for example, when I worked at LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a social media platform. There's different type of content, language content there. You might have posts, articles, comments, all of that is data. And all of that can be used, to improve the user experience. And this is what you would do. So you would look at that data and try to think about different ways of, improving the user experience through using that data. So, for example, you might be looking at the content posted or articles posted, and you would try to figure out what are they about, what are those articles about, so the topics. And you would tag, you would label, annotate those articles with the topics, and then feed a machine learning model to recognize new articles, so that later on, when you scroll through your feed, the website, the machine learning model will provide recommendations for you for content that you are frequently reading. Yeah, so this is what you could do as a computational linguist. Look at the language content and tag it, to improve recommendation systems. So there are differences. You're dealing with language data, but for different purposes. And if you work as a conversation bot engineer, you need to remember that there's that additional nuance, of like, how do we communicate, so that's that additional sort of maybe knowledge that you would need to have or acquire to be able to make those pieces of solutions work properly. So that's more or less the difference.
Thank you, ma'am. So with this, we shall conclude our discussion. Very special thanks to our speakers, Debasri and Martyna ma'am, for this very informative discussion. Our audiences have very much benefited from this discussion. Next, we would like to extend a sincere thanks to our head of the department, Aditi ma'am, for conceptualizing this webinar and guiding us throughout. Our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to our professors, Meena ma'am, Abhijit sir, Selvin sir, and Shunandan sir for their constant support. We would like to thank to our organizing team of this webinar, Aditi ma'am, Riyadi, Anindita di, Ovikda, Shovik, Orundhuti di, Rajeshwari di, and myself. And last but not the least, our audiences for joining us and actively taking participation in this session. Your participation motivates us. Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.